Gentlemen, how you doing? Good morning.
Good morning. How are you, my man?
I'm doing well. Welcome to this live production of the Data Binge Podcast. Thanks for joining.
Thanks for having us, man.
Yeah.
Thank you. Very excited.
Good.
Fired up. Yeah.
Yeah, this is great. We got everything working. We got everything going. So I wanted to start off the session today just because you guys are very special guests with a quote. And wanted to talk about what you guys think about this quote. Because I think about you two gentlemen when I think about this. Life is a fight for territory. Once you stop fighting for what you want, what you don't want will automatically take over. That was from Les Brown.
Can you read that one more time for me?
Life is a fight for territory. Once you stop fighting for what you want, what you don't want will automatically take over. What are you guys' thoughts about that?
Yeah, I'll go. Yeah, like there's this thing. There's been a lot of different processes going on in my life, and there's been this thing of just accepting what is, and like accepting who I am, and accepting, and along with that has come this opening of opportunity. It's wild, and the only other thing it made me think of is we get to keep what we fight for. So like when we say things like I'm bad at remembering names, like you're owning that, you're keeping it. But that's what came to my head. What about you, Keith?
I love my daughter is what's coming to my mind as she steps in right as we get started into my office to say hi. Hi, my love. I'm on a call right now. Okay. Yeah, I'm working. You go eat lunch, okay?
You could bring her in for a quick. I see some.
You want to come say hi? You want to come say hi? Well, you're saying hi. Can you please not go through my stuff?
In 20 years, you're going to see this on YouTube.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. I love you. Enjoy your lunch. Okay. She said enjoy. So I apologize as I missed Rodney's answer there. But the thing that when I hear that quote, first of all, thank you for thinking that it applies to us.
Yeah.
I think about my life. And I think about that fight for territory as the territory that you want. In essence, the entire world isn't a competition other than it being a competition with yourself. Like, what territory do you want? And if you don't go after it, then whatever territory you're in or whatever space you just kind of stumble upon is going to be where you are. Whether that's what you want or don't want, it's just going to take hold of you because you have to be somewhere. You're going to live in some space somewhere. And I feel like that's been up to this journey when, the oldest was born. You kind of fall into the things that are rather than going after the things that you want. And that's what I think of when I just feel like we're in a better space where we're finally going after the thing that we want to get after. So
why do you think of us when you read that?
Well, because in the title of today's discussion, it's anchoring humanity in compassionate conversation, and just doing some study on you gentlemen. And I'll let you get into your podcast. I'll let you get into your mission, your company. Keith can talk with his daughter a little bit more.
A little bit more.
Yeah.
This is the COVID world, people. This is the COVID world. Children, mine is probably going to
have a vanilla yogurt pouch. That's right. Okay, I love you. Yeah. No, you go bring it to Jen, okay?
So yeah.
Sorry, folks. Yeah.
You're good. You're good. No, just we're just thinking about this discussion. You guys have gotten to this space where you help people have better conversations, and that's really tough. So can you talk about what you guys are doing with your podcast? Can you talk about what you're doing with your mission, a little bit about how this came together, so we can talk about territory?
So the mission, oh, look at that. I mean, hi Adeline. The mission, you just, that's the title, Anchoring Humanity in Compassionate Conversation. That's the mission.
He said,
Hi.
I can't have a
And
vanilla pouch.
you know, where this comes from, I can't really talk about where we are with it right now without talking about where we come from. And really, this whole thing came about because of me and Keith's friendship over the last 18 years. And we met in college.
I can't
And
have a
very
vanilla pouch.
quickly, we started to have conversations that,
Can I have
I mean, we got into very sensitive topics that you may not have in general with a friend. Definitely we're going to have somebody who's not quite a friend yet, but we were getting into gay marriage, gay rights, religion, politics. We got into everything. This would be at the gym. We'd be at the gym at Purdue, working out, throwing the weights around, and just having these heavy conversations. And it kind of has to do with our personalities. We're not real big on small talk. Like, that's our small talk. It's like, what do you think about politics today? And fast forward, we realized that we've created this space for each other to be who we are in our friendship. Sans judgment, or mostly sans judgment. I mean, there's some, but it's just a free space to be who we are. And we're like, man, I think I said to Keith, like, let's start a podcast. And his response was, what's a podcast? But then he said, yes, like, yeah, it would be dope if other people could have a conversation. We had a conversation about Kaepernick kneeling, in which we disagreed at first. But we talked through it for a week or 2 weeks and had a really good conversation. We're like, man, what would the world be like if everybody could just have these conversations and hold space for the person or people that they're talking to be who they are and to believe what they believe, and for us to also believe that they're human and they're deserving of just like the basics of respect and humanity. Like, what would that do to conversation? What would that do to where we're trying to go as a species? But yeah, that's my answer. Keith, I gave a little bit of the background from college and some of our conversations the last 18 years and touched on the Kaepernick thing, but like, what would you add to like what our journey is and where actually right now, like where we are right now with the podcast and where we're going from here?
So I think since we're live, I want to use the, like, what just happened, right? Like the way Rodney and Derek, like, it's just like, hey, let her in. Like, giving that kind of space is not easy for people, right? Like, we're trying to accomplish something, we're trying to do something, we're trying to be in a place of doing a live for the value of a brand. And at the end of the day, like, life is life, right? We all have these experiences that bring us to a place that in any given moment we should respect in one another, right? Like, you guys have given me the space to do this. And what's funny about our friendship, and I think this is what I would add to the backstory, Rodney and I when we first became friends, like, we didn't just set out to have hard conversations about stuff, right? We just did. And the first hard conversation we have is about gay marriage. And we were on different sides of this argument, right? And
it wasn't vehement, but we were on different sides.
It wasn't vehement, but we were on different sides of this argument. And
which might be, it might be germane to get into, like, where
we
were on
certainly
that,
can.
maybe.
Yeah. Because, you know, it's so we're on different sides, and over time, like, we didn't hate each other. We didn't, like, judge each other. We just kept having the conversation. And years went by where we're suddenly in a common place about it. Now we both, you know, think positively about it. But at the end of the day, it was always rooted in respect for one another because of the person that we are, not the thoughts that we hold in any given moment in time. And what we've started to do is really think back upon that through many different conversations like that, like Rodney said, Kaepernick in particular. And dissect it. Like, what is it that we're doing that suddenly in 2020 seems to be hard for a lot of people? And what is it that we've been able to do and continue to do? And that's really kind of where we are today, is having dissected that in a way that allows us to not just demonstrate it like through the podcast, but talk about some of the things that we think are relevant to creating that space.
And
and my anxiety is a little high, so I apologize. Like, it got me a little flustered when she barged in, and it's one of those parenting things. Like, I don't want to yell at her or be mad at her. I got to give her that space too. So I'm trying to come back from that. So give me a minute too.
I can do an entire podcast on anxiety. and all I would do is just do a podcast and just do this. This is
I just record my day, right? I just record my day. Yeah.
May is Mental Health Month, so we might as well talk about it. I mean, because it's part of our journey. This COVID world has thrust us all into a place where I don't know. You guys can't see it. There's a crib in my office right now because this has become my youngest daughter's. Like we cohabitate this office, and my oldest is in here a lot, in and out during calls. I'm pretty sure she'll come in before she heads out in a little bit. That was really hard for me. Like perception, expectation, being formal, like all of these things that I have in my head. And now I've come to the point where I relish it. I love it. I love it when she jumps in on a call and says hi. I'm going to miss it when she's not doing it. But
yeah,
the anxiety of the moment, I could feel Keith's because I know him well enough to know he was having it there. That's why I was trying to talk over it because I know that's there. But like, how does it show up for you two?
Yeah, I mean, I would, for me, like just taking that moment, like my heart races, it's all that. And my anxiety for this moment is in particular towards your brand, right, Derek? Like, this is your show, this is your platform, and I want to be respectful to that. Whereas if it were our show, I'd be like, yeah, let's make this happen and let's go, right? So, but yeah, it's definitely a lot of historical expectations of behavior that aren't necessarily aligned to how I want to live my life. And I'm starting to come to that same place, is just embracing it and just, making it happen versus fighting it. And, I don't know about you, Derek. You could record your life, say, and it'd be titled Anxiety in Action.
So we got some folks that are actually coming in on the live LinkedIn. We got a good morning, gentlemen. I love catching this live from Kirby Repco. What a great way to start the day. We got some comments about your shirt, Rodney. Great shirt. And then Phil Wilhelm, he's a GM at SMB Sales at Fortinet. He said, depression typically comes from thinking about the past too much. Anxiety typically comes from thinking about the future too much. Which I think, yeah, absolutely. For me, I have this expectation. I have this character, and just getting deep, the character is called the wolf. And I've discussed this character with different coaches and my wife and others. And this wolf character is constantly asking above and beyond type of objectives from me. And if I can't meet everything perfectly to the best of my ability, there is no other characters that exist or competition. The competition is so fierce within myself, within this character, that there's constant anxiety from not meeting that. And we could probably go deeper into how I was raised and, not having my dad around growing up, but that's just reality. And what it does is it brings me closer. Having so much of that brings me closer to, it's like this social IQ spider sense that goes off when I feel that others have it too. So part of my job as a salesperson, and just to, hopefully as a leader at some point in these different areas, is to just recognize when people are feeling that and do whatever I can to just step away from it or make it better in some way. That's kind of my thoughts on the topic.
Do you?
And I was going to say real quick, Keith, Derek, you're absolutely a leader. Like in all this that you're doing, from a business aspect, and like you 100% are a leader right now. Like I look to your podcast, I look to what you're doing in LinkedIn. The conversations that we have, our weeklies or whenever we can get them, like every time I walk away with something new and energy, and like that's a leader. Like I think we're all leaders when we decide, well, whether or not we decide to be leaders, because people are looking at us. And it's, if we take that and we own it, or just live who we are fully, whether or not we call ourselves a leader, that's going to have an impact on people, and you have an impact on people. So I just want to call that out, because you have an impact on me. So I count as people.
Likewise. Yeah.
You are people. Yeah. You are one people. I'm curious. So you saying that about the wolf reminds me of something Matthew McConaughey said. What a person to quote inspirationally, right? But he talks about when he was 15, he was asked a question like, who's your hero? And he comes back with the answer, my hero is me in 10 years. And then at 25, he was asked again, are you your hero now? And he said, no, I'm me at 35 in another 10 years. Like, his hero is the person he's always striving to be. So I'm curious, like, is the wolf that, or is the wolf a misalignment to like who you are on a day-to-day basis, and it's just an unattainable goal that gives you the anxiety that you feel all the time?
I think it's that. I think it's like the moving goalpost, and maybe it's like maybe it's not the self in the decade, the 2 decades. It's like this moving goalpost, and like it's fun, but it's also fun. It's fun to be clammy and sweaty right now. It's fun to be worried. You know what I mean? It's fun to have anxiety. You know what I mean? Like it's I like it because it's pressure. It's like it's dynamic. It's changing. Like peace is really great too. I think there's good times for peace. My wife is the most peaceful person on the planet. So like we go along really well. It's pretty calm. It's a good balance. But like, how do you act and achieve in that moment of like sheer pressure and fear? You know what I mean? And if you can pull it off, which we usually do, people survive, they wake up the next day, like that journey is like amazing, which is crazy. You know what I mean? So
I think it goes back to that initial Les Brown quote, which you might have to read again, because you alluded to past a little bit. And I think so much of our expectations of ourselves come from culture and family and society, and like things that we think we should be that we maybe don't even believe wholeheartedly ourselves. And when you strip all that away, when you strip away the things you should own or should be, the tyranny of should, you can get to who you are. And that Matthew McConaughey quote I love, and this week, it's funny you bring it up, Keith, that quote, I was listening to it and I realized that my hero is me right now and me in 10 years. Like, I am who I am supposed to be, and I love that, and I love me for it. And man, I can get better, and I can do better, and I'm gonna keep striving for it.
Yeah. How did you? Sorry, Derek, I don't mean to put this back to you. I'm fascinated by this since we're talking about mental health and Mental Health Month. How did you get to the place of embracing your anxiety to drive you versus it doing what it does to so many of us, including myself, at times, just knocking you on the floor and just saying, I'm going to avoid it and walk away?
So I have to attribute that to my wife. And we met when I was 28 or so, and I was, living the solo bachelor life, kind of pursuing and consuming and just living within the ego and just not taking care of myself. And she told me to read The Power of Now. She told me to go to therapy. I did all those different things. And now those are like tool sets of mine. So I typically always see a psychologist at some point, and bring that person, that coach, growth items I really want to work at. Like, I bring a plan, and I have a vision for where I want to get. And in those like very careful planning sessions and like very self-introspective type of discussions with myself, I know, like, that goalpost, right? Like that goalpost. It's moving constantly. Like how do I reach happiness? Well, I know that happiness doesn't exist. All it exists is the pursuit of your values at that moment. And those values change all the time. Those aren't things that I just conjured. I learned that from mentors and coaches. So like, I think with that moving goalpost, if people think of it that way, you're never going to reach the present moment. You're never going to be able to like, I meditated this morning. I was thinking about this podcast for 9 minutes of that 10-minute meditation. And I was okay. I was okay with getting crushed. You know what I mean? By my mind. Yeah. So it's like also that like okayness. So it's this crazy harmony. And like, I would like to understand what you guys think of that. I mean, you guys have interviewed like 77 people on your podcast. Like you've had to learn. I can't imagine how much you've learned from all that. But what are you guys thinking there? Like, what are your thoughts?
It's an interesting quote about happiness. I think in that definition, happiness becomes the present moment, and being in it and seeing that you're not in it. So meditating and then seeing that you're thinking about this thing that's in the future, but recognizing it and not judging it. Like to me, for my life, that's happiness. Like if I can, that's it. That's happiness. You just mentioned some amazing things. Eckhart Tolle, Power Now. Man, that was a game changer. One of our guests, Nabi Fofana, Olympic sprinter, gave us that. I don't know. Those are my initial thoughts. What do you think, Keith?
Yeah, I think that lack of judgment in the moment, because our mind definitely can take us in many different directions in any given second, right? And to have a peaceful mind is an incredibly time-consuming effort, right?
Yes.
And like being able to move forward, that lack of judgment that you do, I think actually anchors you in the present. You're thinking about this thing for 9 minutes of your 10 minutes, but you're at peace with it. Like, I think that exemplifies a level of happiness that it's acceptance. It's this is my moment, this is where I am, and this is what I'm doing. Even if I'm thinking about the future, I'm good with it. That to me, like, speaks volumes about your ability to drive forward and keep going. Because one thing that's been really hard for me, and I know for Rodney, because we talk about it all the time, is anchoring on the journey, right? Anchoring on the process. We have goals. I've had a lot of goals in my life. And a lot of times when you set a goal 10 years from now, it becomes impossible to achieve if you're only focused on the goal, right? If I only say, oh, this is what I want in 10 years and then do nothing to achieve that goal, that 10 years is going to come and go and the goal will just be a dream. And I've done that a lot in my past, especially in my adolescence, my teenage years, and early adulthood. That has changed significantly in my life, and the appreciation of the wake up, the 9 minutes of 10 thinking about the next thing that you're doing in a meditation, the therapy session that I had this past Monday, the 2 days of, like, each step. Like, we just recorded 100 Daily Chronicles. We can talk about what that is, but like, that is a LinkedIn video series that we set out to do for a variety of reasons. And Rodney and I just talked about this yesterday. Like, at the end of the day, all it really is, aside from its content, is us just showing up for ourselves each and every day to keep moving one step forward. And, I think that's when you talk about that, that's what I think about with happiness. It's the embracing of the process.
One thing I know there, real quick, just to directly answer your question about what we've learned from guests. That's an amazing question, and I think we should write a book about it, because what we've learned,
which is probably what we'll do,
of what we've learned. The podcast, More in Common. Like, I've always referred to it and we have referred to it as a social experiment to prove the hypothesis that we have more in common than that which divides us. And so what we're learning is what are the commonalities. And the thing interesting. So we're in Mental Health Month. We're talking about anxiety and depression. The thing that is the most common out of all the conversations we've had has been conversations about mental health, and more frankly, it's been about mental illness, being out of balance with mental health. But that's something that all humans face on some level, some degree, and I think it's a gateway I think it can be a gateway towards compassion or empathy, and it depends how you internalize those two words. For me, it's compassion. I think it can be a gateway to saying, man, like, I don't know what happened to you when you woke up this morning or on your way to work or with your family or whatever it is that caused you to react the way that you reacted, but it probably doesn't actually have to do with me. It probably has to do with who knows what in your life. And I can give you a little bit of grace in like 90% of circumstances. There are things that are unacceptable, but for me, it's an entry point into compassion. And that's like one of the biggest things I've gotten out of this, because coming into it, like therapy and talking, like I've learned so, like anorexia and bipolar. I've learned so much from our guests about what these are and what it means to live in these spaces that I myself don't live in and have never known anybody that's talked about it. So it's just been super enlightening for me.
And I'm curious, and thank you for that. I really respect, like, doing 100 YouTube videos. I mean, and one of the reasons I wanted to have you gentlemen on the podcast is, and another reason I read that quote is because it's obvious that there is within both of you, there's some territory, and you're consistently and constantly showing up to claim that territory on a daily basis. You guys are putting out a lot of material. I know you're working super late. The amount, and we'll get into what the building a brand looks like and building a podcast. I certainly know what that looks like, but there's a lot of respect coming into that. I'm interested in understanding, like through this process, like what is the key differentiator between someone who's able to move forward and do something like this and someone who's not? And like, what is the self-talk that exists there?
I thought about this a lot, and I've heard varying quotes, varying people talk about the idea that success or achieving whatever it is you set out to achieve, define success and what it is for yourself, and that is what it is for yourself. It's not what it is for me. And you define that and you set that out. That attitude, that behavior, it's not anointed upon you, right? It is not given to us. It is not biologically ingrained into who we are. There are different obstacles for different people based on life experience and biology and all those things, but the number one thing is just showing up. Like, no matter what, you cannot replace just showing up.
Yeah.
And you can't think about it and it happen. Like, you just got to show up, and it could be the worst product in the world and no one could watch it. But to the quote about claiming the territory, it's not the competition with others and there's this zero-sum game in life, right? Like, your territory, your space, and the things that you want to do, whether it's a hobby, whether it's a passion project, or whether it is your fundamental alignment, your ikigai, the thing that you get paid for, the thing that you love, the thing that you're capable of, and ultimately deliver into the world. Like, none of it works unless you just show up. And that is just a lesson I've learned through this process, that it doesn't matter what I've thought about it or how good it is or how bad it's been, because we've had some certain moments. We just keep showing up, and it's just, and the more, I think you and Rodney have talked about this and created that circular argument about, what is it, momentum creates motivation, creates action, right? Like, yep. It's not just Rodney, just sitting back and waiting for the motivation to strike you so you act. is, it's just sometimes you just got to show up, and all of a sudden you're motivated and you're acting, and things just do, right?
Yeah.
Everything takes care of itself from there.
We could talk about that. That's a good point. I don't know if it's before just showing up or right along with it. I think they're probably parallel, is belief. Like having a belief in yourself and in the thing, so that when you do episode 75 and you're like, man, I don't have any followers or any likes, because it's not really about those. Like it is about showing up. Like for me, that's success. But you got to have a belief, because there will be days where you're like, why am I doing this? Like that's, you talk about self-talk. Like, why am I doing this? Nobody cares. Well, I care. And like I'm very aligned with the reason that I'm doing it, the reasons that I'm doing it. So it doesn't matter if anybody else cares. I'm going to keep showing up. And along with that, there's this ownership, so territory of the idea of the thing or the things, but it's not possessive. It's to a point where it's like, when somebody does see it, if they give feedback, it's like being able to take that and augment. It's like, okay, I want this to be, who is it? Reid Hoffman, the CEO of LinkedIn, or founder of LinkedIn. He's got a great podcast that I can't remember the name of. That's how great it is. And I'm playing. It is really good.
It's a good podcast, bro.
It is good.
I'll put it in the show notes for folks.
It's about startups, but he talks about your first product, whatever it is. He's like, if you're not embarrassed, you're moving too slow. And I kind of agree with that. Like, just go and iterate. And if you believe in it enough and you keep showing up, eventually somebody's going to give you some advice, or you're going to watch a YouTube video, or you're going to learn about lighting. You're going to learn about how to write better. You're going to want it to be better. And and this is where I talk about the possessive thing. Cause like sometimes if it's yours and somebody makes a comment, it's hard to hear it, because it's like a critique. It's like, but this is my baby. And it's like, well, but I want my baby to be amazing. I want this thing to be, I want it to be consumed. That's not, it's weird, because you got these competing things. Like showing up is a success, but I do want it to be consumed. I want it to be out there.
Results do matter.
Yeah.
Yes.
And yeah, so it's a lot of that
Done
stuff.
is better than perfect, right?
Oh boy. Perfectionism. So you talk about self-talk. Your boy here has got perfectionism. They say fear is the mind killer, or if you're a Dune fan, sci-fi, like fear is the mind killer. Nah, perfectionism is the mind killer. Like, good God, there's so many things I never got off the couch and did that I had like wonderful ideas on, because I gotta have it all ticked and tied, every single I, every single T. And I was like, nah, man, you really need like 30%. Like, just go, just do it.
We to the point of that, like, consistency draws in assistance, whether it's one person, to what Rodney was saying. And we're building out this consulting practice to bring the approach that we try to deliver from anchoring humanity and compassionate conversation through some of the tools and techniques that we've dissected in what we do and what we've learned through study. And suddenly we are talking to some folks who have influence and impact that could bring us into a space where now we're starting to see the financial component of our efforts, right? And starting to deliver on that. Not because we have this great idea, right? And that we have passion around that idea that we've been talking about for 3 years and haven't done anything for. It's because we have this idea, we have passion around the idea, and we've shown up every single day for 3.5 years in some capacity. And we've shown that, hey, we're not just thinking about it. Like, so showing up, it's good for you, it's good for the soul, it's good for the outcome. And it's also, it draws in people to help you along the way, because we definitely don't do it alone.
What's that look like for you, Derek? Like, what's the self-talk? What's the win for you?
So there's a lot of self-talk. So before we go there, Kirby, he's making some contributions here. He's saying, what separates you? Kirby Repko is solution architect at Microsoft. I work closely with. Great guy. He's got almost
My man,
1,500 followers on his YouTube channel. I think it's called SQL Talks. So a little shout out to Kirby. He's just an amazing person. So the fact that he's contributing live to this it's very special. He's saying what separates you three is you are actually doing versus just talking about doing. You just get better doing. And he's also like, looking at this live broadcast is a great example. I have no idea how you guys are producing this 3-camera feed. Amazing. So he's a camera guy. Kirby, I'll tell you right now, the self-talk, my light turned off, probably because I have a crappy light that I bought for super cheap. Turned off while you guys were talking. The self-talk was, you suck. Why didn't you buy a better light? Why can't you pay attention to what's going on right now? Don't screw it up. You're live. You really suck. Oh my God. Like, why are you even doing this too? You know what? It's cool if you suck. It's not that bad if you suck. Oh, Rodney's point is good. Okay, we're getting back. So it's super cyclical. That's kind of what the self-talk looks like for me. But at the end of the day, I love Gary Vee. I love people who talk about doing. I'm in this phase right now where it's like doing. People who are doing right now instead of thinking are just accomplishing tasks. You know, I have people that I work with that are just constantly doing, like, what can I do in this time? I brought on Matt Homan from the, he has a business in St. Louis, and he talks about how to have an efficient meeting and what that looks like, and how meetings aren't constructed to get to objectives. They're just a means to an end. And like, that's how a lot of people live their lives. I think they're just coming to this thing and expecting things to happen. You really have to have a vision. You have to execute against that vision. You have to continuously tell yourself, I think, good things and bad things across that journey. But like, at the end of the day, just do it. Just put it out. Just press record. Just get on this thing. Just let your light fail. Just let your daughter come in. Yeah. You know, just let it.
There's a quote I heard from Brene Brown in, I think, Dare to Lead, and it's about the man. It's the man in the arena. It's Teddy Roosevelt. I just want to read the first part of it, because what you just said about people doing, and I believe that. I listen to people not doing as well, but there's a different size grain of salt added to how I ingest it. But the man in the arena, it's not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again. And then there's more. There's a lot of really good. I mean, it's a long, really good quote. But like, I heard that, and I was just like,
There's this. So like, from personal, I shared the doing, like, previously, primarily because the majority of my life, like, I'm 38 in a month, and much of my life, in a very, very real way, has been thinking about the thing I want and not doing anything for it. And experiencing the polarity between a life you want without action and a life you want with action. And what I'm coming to, especially in this space, is that the doing component, like you said, Derek, doesn't have to be perfect. We have the tendency, I know I have the tendency to want to, as Rodney said, just figure out how it's perfect. How does everybody do it? How is it done naturally? Like, what are all the ways that you're supposed to do it? And what I'm coming to grips with is that, like, the formula of life is not predetermined, right? We all have a measuring cup that may use different forms of measure, and we may get the same results doing it in a different way. So when you do it, you're finding a way to do it with your own flavor that aligns to who you are through those mistakes and the learnings from others on how they've done it better, and maybe how I don't care how they did it better. It doesn't align to who I am. And you the only way you understand that after however many years of doing is by getting up and going.
And while I was appreciating your comment, Rodney, I think you brought in one of your little girls, the eldest, to come and say hi. She's pretty cute. Good thing I'm looking right at the camera. Otherwise, I'd be like, smiling and waving and talking like a baby while Keith is dropping hot knowledge.
Don't worry, I wasn't looking at you anyway, Derek, so I wouldn't have known.
So John Rockwell, someone I worked with in the past, came in and said, "Impressive lack of quarantine beards, gentlemen."
I shaved this morning. Funny thing is, though, like, facial hair is not my friend. It doesn't grow very well, and I probably shave once a week. So, I figured I'd clean up for this one.
Yeah,
I'm growing my Pharaoh goatee. It's getting pretty out of hand, but if I could, I would. I just can't. I can't do it doesn't grow.
Yeah.
The best part about me growing out a beard is I cross the line of like 5 different racial prejudices. Yeah. I'm getting stopped by police. I'm getting stopped by immigration, TSA. I'm getting hit by everybody. Yeah, everyone's hitting me up. You know what I mean? So I don't do the beard. So I know we got 15 minutes left or so. I'd love to tie this into company culture. How you guys are talking about like culture. I know last year, Stacey Albert, she's an account executive at Microsoft. She was the diversity and inclusion lead for the Southwest. She put on a lunch, and I couldn't find the exact invite, but you guys were brought in. You delivered an amazing show or talk. I don't know what you want to call it, engagement, based upon understanding your biases. And I'd love to understand, we're having this really great conversation. And honestly, you guys are professional conversationalists because you're just I'm so comfortable right now. It's crazy. And I do this quite often. So you guys are good at this.
Thank you.
What does it look like in the enterprise space? What are the challenges, and what can people do to start having these types of discussions, being okay with having your daughter come in on a live feed and the self-taught, all the different things we're talking about, like how does that come into company culture?
First up, big ups to Stacey Albert. She was actually my manager for a little while. Great people. Also, I have to say this before we go off the air. Derek, you just had your 40th podcast episode, I think.
I did. Number 40. This is number 42. It will be. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Congrats, man. Because that's no small thing. Yeah. The average podcast is around 6 episodes.
I don't know if it still is, but it definitely is close to it. Yeah.
Yeah. Or maybe it's 13, but who knows? But anyway, good on you. Yeah. Good on you, and congrats.
Thank you for that. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, seriously.
So one of the things, so if we're writing the book for what our guests have taught us, so the conversations that we've had with them has informed us on who we are. It has informed us on how people interact and commonalities, and it has turned into this corporate culture consulting. And essentially, we have broken down a methodology on where people can start to engage to create a space like this. Like, the thing that we do is we create a space where people feel safe, they feel comfortable, and people talk about the safe space all the time, but I don't know that what we've done is to define that space and give tools on how to build that space. And then from there, you go start working on the culture and you start doing the hard work. I don't know what you want to add.
Yeah. So I would say workshop, where we've actually modified the content to be more workshoppy, if that's a word. Rodney, I've been given feedback in the past to not use this analogy, but I'm going to use it anyway because we're on the Data Binge and I'm allowed to in front of Data Binge audience. In the realm of quantum physics, right?
I knew it.
Yeah. There's this thing that physicists have been searching for, and they finally discovered it. The the Higgs boson, right? And the Higgs boson is essentially a particle that gives the physical matter that we all feel and touch. Like without the Higgs, nothing would exist, right? And that's how I think about our approach and what we're trying to do, right? There are amazing organizations out there that will strategize on a corporate culture strategy. There are amazing organizations out there that'll help you to teach you to listen better, or different ways to communicate, or different ways to ask questions. What we have found is that there isn't a lot of space that exists that says, how do we find that baseline that just gets people to engage with a proper set of expectations and understanding, not of what you're going to say or how you're going to say it, but just that it is there to be said and it is there to be asked. So we've put together the MORE approach, which is 4 core principles of creating a space that's meeting people where they are, open to listen more, removing intent, and embracing curiosity. At the same time, looking to we're expanding that. We've started expanding that into this space of what is culture, right? At a company, there's intentional culture, and then there's culture. Culture lives no matter whether you set out for it or not. And there's this thing that has happened in the past. We're all Microsoft employees, but I'm going to talk about Google for a second. When Google first started, right? Yeah. When Google first started, like you talked about the culture. So when you showed up, you were trying to find how you can participate in the culture that exists. There are very few organizations that in whole set that and keep that going. Oftentimes this is what we believe, but then you're kind of just taking part, and it modifies and molds based on the people, because no one really understands what it is that we should be doing to live the culture that leadership wants to do. So we're trying to help define what that is, working on a lot of depth around values and fundamental activities that actually assign to those values. So people, when they show up, they know how to live the desired culture that you're setting out for as an organization.
And to one of your points, Derek, like, how does it play out in the enterprise corporate world? Like, how does it play out at a Microsoft? We're because of the space, like we're really good, and we actually relish in being in super uncomfortable conversations, talking about Trump and Hillary, talking about, I mean, we've gotten into so many things on the podcast, but we bring a lot of those into the corporate space, which is for us even was, talk about self-talk, like, oh, we can't do that. We can't talk about Trump. We can't talk about Hillary at our workplace, let alone a workplace. But it turns out that important conversations are important conversations, and ignoring them at work and ignoring how to deal with them at work doesn't make them go away. To Keith's point, culture happens. Like whether you are a founder and you've got your core team and you're building your culture intentionally, or you're just banging it out to get deals and go get Series A and Series B, and it's everything for the dollar, and you're not thinking about culture's happening. And when you then have 1,000 employees or 500 employees or 100,000 employees, that culture has just grown and grown, and it lives. And so what we do is we come in and we address it for that group that's like, oh crap, it's gotten out of hand, which is usually after some kind of incident, some HR incident or a media incident. Or if somebody's like, I want to be intentional about this up at the front, like I'm building something and I want to have my culture be meaningful, then I will do that. And part of our inspiration, back to Reid Hoffman and his wonderful Masters of Scale. That's the podcast.
Yeah, that's the podcast. Yeah.
Nailed it.
Yeah.
He talked, there's a great episode about the Netflix culture deck, and they have very concretely defined their culture. It opens with the bull that was in front of Bear Stearns that had all these platitudes and loyalty, integrity, honesty. And we know what happened to Bear Stearns. You can have words, but words aren't culture.
Yeah.
So we talk about living culture.
And a couple. Go ahead, Keith.
I was just gonna. It would be quick because I'm not often quick. But Dr. Mike Gervais in his high performance culture training,
yes,
talks about the identity of an individual contributor or an employee. And for the longest time, it's I have my home life, I have my work life, and they're two different people. When the reality is, we are the same person, right? Yeah. And as a result, it's engaging the humanity of the workplace and allowing that engagement to bring in an inclusive culture that so many people are trying to deliver on these days.
And I know we've got a couple minutes left in terms of culture, like why people should care, why managers should care. And there's a lot of data on this and just some stuff I pulled from Forbes, who got some data from Gallup. Highly engaged teams show 21% greater profitability. We're talking about engagement. Employees who feel their voice is heard are 4.6 times more likely to feel empowered to perform at their very, very best. So we're talking about revenue. We're talking about numbers, business metrics. 96% of employees believe showing empathy is important to advancing employee retention. And then disengaged employees cost U.S. companies up to $550 billion a year. So some big items here. So I got two more questions, and we can end this thing. And we got 4 minutes. Let's set the timer. One, can you leave something for the guests to understand how to have a better conversation? And then two, once we answer that, I have a question I always ask my guests. You have unlimited resources. You have 7 days. What would you do with it?
Keith, go first. I talked first most of this.
Yeah, that's fair. To have better conversation, God, we ask the same question to all of our guests, and it's the first time I've been asked. I think there are just so many things that you can do, but at the end of the day, Rodney's talked about it a little bit. What someone else thinks, says, acts, does, it's not about you most often, right? It's about whatever their lived experience is. In that lived experience, it doesn't mean that they're suddenly a bad person, a bigot, or hateful, or whatever it is. It just means that their lived experience is what it is. And there's opportunity in that conversation to learn more. Seek to learn more in conversations. Ask questions. We don't ask enough questions generally. One side asks questions, the other side answers. We see a lot of interview and conversation. So ask questions, bounce them off each other, and just learn more from each other, because I think that is a core to making conversation easier.
Yeah, so the start of this journey, you mentioned Dr. Mike Gervais. The start of this journey for me was then five and a half years ago when I meditated for the first time. I'm not saying you have to meditate, but I think there is a power in sitting with yourself. I don't care how you get that, like it's running, working out, but actually hearing yourself and seeing yourself. I think it just allows you to see who you are in a room, or be open to hearing who you actually are and how you're showing up. And then my thing is compassion, man. And it's not this ethereal, unattainable thing. It's just, you're human. I'm human. Sometimes life is effed up. COVID-19 sucks for everybody for different reasons. It's not just that it's worse for me because I have 2 kids and you don't have any kids. It's hard on everybody for different reasons. And if I can just come to a place where it's just like, I see your humanity. I see your humanity. I see my humanity. Let's start there. That's where I think it starts at.
Now on the other one, is it 7 days to accomplish it or 7 days to start it?
You got 7 days, and then you die. You got 7 days and there's nothing left. So you got unlimited resources. We've had guests say that they're going to clean their house. We've had guests say that they're going to march a bunch of lawyers into the CVS Capitol and demand that they shorten their receipts in 7 days. We've had whatever comes to mind. What would you do?
I would build a sustainable education system for every child in this country that is completely self-sustained, not government dependent, that pays teachers enough money to deliver regardless of socioeconomic background. And then I'd die and it would live on forever.
And while he's doing that, I would take this work that we're doing around conversation and getting to know people and culture, and I would accelerate it, honestly. Like, I would take it to the point where it doesn't need me. It's its own self-sustaining organism, and I would peace out.
You got 7 days. So
I would do a Luke Skywalker and just dissipate into the ethos and be like, y'all got this. Great Jedi.
Gentlemen, this was, I know you guys have a hard stop. This was an amazing discussion, and just thank you for making it two-sided. Thank you for asking me questions and being patient and helping me learn, inspiring me to aspire for greater. And I'm sure a lot of folks are looking at you, gentlemen. So continue the work. What's the best way to get a hold of you, gentlemen?
Through
moreincommonpod.com.
What's your cell phone number? No. Okay, moreincommonpod.com. And I'll put
moreincommonpod.com. That's the access point for all things More in Common. Go there, you can get it all.
And you can find us on LinkedIn for sure. Since we're here, More in Common. Not the research institution. The one with the microphone on the logo.
Derek, thank you. Thank you for the space. Thank you for the opportunity. I actually look forward to doing more of this with you. You've been an inspiration. Man, I want to do more. So thank you. Keep doing what you're doing.
Bye, gentlemen.
Keep it up, man. Keep moving. All right.
I will. Thanks, guys. Happy Friday. Happy Memorial League weekend.
Friday. Yep.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Cheers.